the quality of the phone you're using is pretty bad tonight on the conference.
Well, I'll tell you, my phone outlet, I have to bend down there and take a look what happened, because when they did the floor, they must have touched something and there's no connection.
Nice door.
So I have to use my cell phone. You don't hear it?
Yeah, now I hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll bring you over closer. That's
Okay, recording.
all right. All right. Listen, guys. There is 2 lines over here. Which are, you could say, typical the Rebbe Rashab's lines. Every word has to be understood. What is it doing over there? And he's trying to get us to understand a very important principle. And we tried. So far, the trial was successful in convincing us that there is something here to understand. And therefore we are going to, give it a chance to understand it. The first thing we started, okay, now the line begins with Bichlal, that's a Choftes, and it's approximately 10 lines from the top. I didn't count them, but that's an approximate number. The first word on the line is Bichlal. Now, at the end of that line, I'm sorry. The topic per se is how does the oineg of the nefesh end up to be disseminated in specific functional koiches, where in fact the oineg shebenefesh is what is called shaloi be'erech to functional koiches. The oineg shebenefesh cannot even relate to the concept of koiches. And this we discussed in many different ways, and I want to add, so to speak, a very pointed principle, evidence of the fact that this is shaloi b'yerech, and there is no way to correlate them directly. Koiches means functions, actions. It's not koyach. The koyach of speech, for example, is you have an idea, and then you produce the idea in a very gradual manner, piecemeal. You develop it. That's what the koyach. And every koyach requires the idea and so forth. It was time and space where to be. Koyach is not an existential point. It is something which is developed, which is built. That's a koyach. Whether it be koyach hadibur or koyach haseichel, that's what the koyach by definition is. The koyach hahalicha. Koyach hahalicha means that he can walk. You can get from one place to another place. And to get from one place to another place, it takes time and takes effort. The nefesh, per se, does not know that there is such a thing as not being where you want to be. The nefesh is where it wants to be. As a famous saying of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov said, Mokim sheritzoyne shel Adam, shamhu. Where a person's will is, that is where he is. There is definitely things to be elaborated and discussed and explain how this is. But this is the principle of the nefesh. It's an akudas ha'emes, so to speak. And emes is all-encompassing. It's not lacking anything. It doesn't have to get to any place in order to have its complement. And therefore, the whole principle of koiches, of acquiring things in a cumulative manner, doesn't exist in the nefesh. And it doesn't exist to such an extent that it can relate to the concept. I think this is clear. Do I need more examples of this? This is a principle that you should understand. The nefesh is an etzem. Etzem is everything. And therefore, the whole principle of koiches and acquisition, time and space, it don't exist. And if you say now that this element of nefesh, this oinek sheba nefesh, now has to be disseminated and applied to a koyach, a specific koyach, that functions in a very limited and accumulative manner. The gap between them is immeasurable. It's not like you measure it in miles, and it's immeasurable. This has the element of time, so it doesn't have the element of time. Period.
The Einig of the nefesh that we speak about here is not. There's no process. There's no acquisition. The Einig that we speak about is mistadik in itself.
Oinek sheba nefesh is the oinek eliki. No, there's no. It's not oinek. This is the point which repetitively pointed out. Oinek sheba nefesh is not an experiential oinek. It feels good. Give me some more. And that's not the oinek sheba nefesh. It's an essential oinek. It's oinek of the godly reality. And therefore, we can readily we can expose the point that there is an enormous gap and there is no way to translate that oinek into an oinek of a functional level. It has to go through some kind of a transitional state. This transitional state is very tricky, because anything that goes into the category of koiches inevitably has that element. So how do you take oinek atzmi and bring it into koiches which are time and space dependent? But do you hear it so far? Hello? So therefore we say there has to be Tammuz. Who is that Tammuz? Atma Mutza is called Choch. What's Chochmah? What's the uniqueness of Chochmah that it can serve that function? And this is what we are now describing. V'yodua gamkein, Okay, you have that, and the end of the line that begins Bichlal. I'm sorry?
I'm listening on the phone and on the screen. So
Oh.
I don't answer because the sound is better on the screen, but I can't talk to the screen.
Okay, but you heard so far.
Heard everything so far. Yes.
Okay, good. All right, now we're going inside. We started this already several times, but this is what we're going to learn anyway today. So he said like this, V'yodua gamkein, it is also known, shekoyach ha-chochmo, this koyach of chochmo. It is a koyach, and it is a koyach in the category of shehu reishis ha-koyachas ha-gluyim. This is the beginning, the first point of reishis of the koyachas ha-gluyim. Koyachas ha-gluyim means functioning koyachas, revealed koyachas. Koyachas ha-gluyim means, by definition, that's what koyachas ha-gluyim means, that there is a point where it is and a point where it is not. If there is a point where it is and a person does not, therefore this is already, so to speak, in time and space. That whole concept of yes and no doesn't exist in the nefesh. Therefore, it would seem that koyach ha-chochma is not a solution to our problem, but they say no, it is definitely a solution to our problem. Why? Because it is reishis ha-koyachas ha-gluyim. What is reishis? What is the emphasis of reishis? How is that significant? If it is beginning. If you say it is the finest, the purest, it doesn't say the purest, it says the reishis, the first. What is the significance of the first? The first, or the beginning, represents an element in the koyachas ha-gluyim that is, in fact, it has an element of koyachas ha-gluyim and there's an element of koyachas makif. I'll explain to you what the principle here is. Normally, koyachas ha-gluyim, functioning koyachas that whatever occurs there we can identify. For example, colors. Colors are identified by what? By contrast. If you have only one color, there is no such thing as colors. There is red, blue, and white. Therefore, there's red, blue, and white. In other words, there is something that causes you to recognize this as this color because it's in contrast to this color. This is generally the principle. This is generally the means by which koyachas ha-gluyim grasp therein. Like from Chochmah comes into Bina. What is Bina? Bina develops the thought of Chochmah in a piecemeal manner. It identifies fundamentals, the next stage, and until it reaches the pinnacle. So that in Bina, for example, or this is true, of course, in other cases, but even in Bina, which is koyach ha-seichel, Bina, a manner of speech, Bina knows what it knows by contrast, by being forced to know it in contrast to something else. Therefore, this is mamish koyach ha-golem, and this is shaloi be'erech to that which is known without contrast, that which has everything, the Etzem. Chokhmah has an element, a point, an essential point in Chokhmah. What's the matter? Take a chair that has paddings. Now we have a new floor, we have to be careful. Not all chairs have paddings. Put paddings. Shoot. Chair shoes. Chair shoes, right. Oh. Good. Take a look at me. Chokhmah has that, this is what Reishis is the beginning of the Kodesh, I believe, which means it does not have a trigger. It doesn't have anything that entices it. Oh, what is this in contrast to this? That's not the way Chokhmah is alerted. Chokhmah is alerted without being alerted. There is the truth and it sees it.
There's nothing about Chokhmah but the truth. Right?
That's right.
There's nothing to contrast that with.
No, it's right. It's not contrast, and it doesn't take the truth because of contrast. It sees it because it is the truth, not that something that triggers it. Okay, listen, this is interesting, look at it. It's not interesting at all. It's just a reality. It sees it not because of interest. Let's take, and I want to elaborate now, we have a real usage to the example of sight. And in sight we have these two levels of sight. We have the initial sight. At a glance, we see the entire panorama. And it's not a panorama. It's not a panorama that consists of many details. We see the entire reality. We see it because it's real. Okay? The initial sight, the initial experience that occurs when you open your eyes, is not that I see a tree and I see this and see that. As a matter of fact, I see the sky, I see, and not even the contrast, the various clouds and so, just the expanse, the total reality. This is what sight, the initial sight.
You have to keep the phone close to your Paltiel. On the phone line, it's just not very clear tonight.
This is the initial sight. Is it better?
We'll have to make do.
All right. This is the initial sight. Sight, this is why we always say that sight has an extremely important, fundamental effect on the human being. In that it gives the human being the sense of reality. You can identify all objects by touch. So you identify the object by touch, and it does not give you that sense. Nowhere near what you experience, what you get when you just have a glance. Once you have a glance, then you walk around and you can touch all the objects, and everything is real, everything fits into a certain reality, a certain context. But the reality itself is provided by this initial sight. We always say there are phenomenal things in sight. Sight is effortless. Effortless. You don't see because you actively see it. you see it automatically because it's there. This is the great gift of sight. And it is directly representing, reflecting Chokhmah. This is one element that is so obvious that even though lahabdil animals also see, animals do not see this element of reality in the human being. If animals is a tree, an animal, whatever it is, an edible or non-edible. The initial sight that the human being experiences, that he is in the real world, which has nothing to do with colors and size and weight, nothing, just the fact that there is a reality. And this reality is something which I see not because I sought to see it, I don't have to go any place to see it. It doesn't come from any place, it is there. This is what sight is. We discussed many times over the years the phenomenal element of sight. We said that even though sight is so effortless, totally effortless, automatic, nevertheless, there is still the experience inside that I'm seeing, there is an activity involved. I'm seeing something. And this element that I'm seeing something, this is what qualifies sight as one of the kochas hagluim. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in that category of kochas hagluim. You would be in the category of kochas makifim. It is a kochas hagluim because there is nevertheless that give and take. I'm seeing it. But I'm seeing it in a manner that not I'm seeing it by actively pursuing, looking, seeing it. I'm seeing it because it's there. It's automatic. This is similar. This is close to the makif element, which is not something which is acquired. Like I said, I want to be there. I'm there automatically. That's how sight happens. And Chokhmah on a much higher level, where when one sees what Chokhmah sees now, what the clarity and the truth and the godly truth of existence, of life, Chokhmah is that moment where we see the life element of the nefesh in that fashion. That's why it's called Reshis. There's nothing triggering it. There's no experience that triggers us to be aware, to notice the life element that comes in Chokhmah. It is one of the kochas hagluim, but it is Reshis kochas hagluim. What does Reshis mean? There is nothing that triggers it. There is no question that precedes it, like in Bina. Everything I find down in Bina, there's a question. How does this happen? Oh, that's how it happened. Chokhmah, there is no question that precedes it.
Why does Reshis mean? I just don't understand how the connection is made to the word Reshis, that principle.
Reshis means that it begins even of itself. There is nothing that starts with it. It means Reshis. Very important principle to understand.
If I read, going back 2-3 minutes ago, I read correctly what you just said. There is the sight. I read that there's two types of sight. There's the sight that sees the entire panorama, and then there's a sight that could see details. In that case, the sight becomes functional. We say that when we see details, it corresponds to the moment after the Memusa.
Yeah, that's of course. Yes, that is after the Mamutza. Because then you're really questioning, what is this about? What is this about? What's what? This is red, this is blue. What's that about?
Well, there is two types of sight, technically.
No question about it. Sight is still a superior koyach to touch. But it's already this is the difference between Chokhmah and Bina. Bina is also Seichel. And Seichel at whatever level is unique. But it's not like Chokhmah.
Can I ask a question here?
Yep.
I'm trying to understand your types of ratios. There's nothing that triggers them. So how can we say over the years that something surfaces in Chokhmah? In other words, it comes up in Chokhmah because there was something that you were looking for. This is like Yitzhak was this. It's not the development of anything, but the point surfaces in response to you're looking for something. That's not true?
That's true. How did you know to look for it?
I don't know. I don't do that too often.
All right. You knew to look for it because you saw it before you identified it with your eyes.
So this is also, and then once you identify it and are looking for it, that's still Chokhmah?
The first moment is Chokhmah. Chokhmah is called Borag HaMavrik.
The first moment of looking or the first moment of seeing?
The first moment of seeing.
Hello?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
First moment of seeing.
The first moment of seeing.
Yes.
But again, how is it gracious? Because there is something that's, I'm not trying to show anything up. I'm trying to see how this fits with the sense that something pulls you to look.
The looking process for Chokhmah is not the similar as looking process for Bina, for example. In Bina, you are looking, you're identifying certain points, comparing to other points, and then you continue to build. You accept and reject as you go through. The looking process in Chokhmah is that you are. Let's take a functioning example, and then we'll see right away. You are looking for page Chavtes. How are you looking for page Chavtes? You remove that which conceals it. You don't find it per se. You move page by page, and you don't find it because you found page Chav Zayin, therefore you find this is not Chavtes. When you find Chavtes, you find it directly. Because you remove the obstacle, you remove that which covers it. When you remove that which covers it, then it's there. And you see it not because you looked for it and you uncovered it, you see it because it's there. You didn't see it before, something was covering it. But it was there all the time. And when you finally uncover it, you've simply uncovered it and you see that which was there all the time. This is the principle of Chochmah. This is the meaning Reishis. There is nothing that makes you see it, that gives you the ability to see it. Like in Bina. This type of experience, although it is an experience, here really I'd like you to bear with me and try to understand. This is like going between seichel and nefesh. And in order to understand the principle of Mimutza, we have to go between seichel and nefesh. This type of experience, where, yes, indeed, I see it. It's a koyach hagol. But there is not the process, the normal process of koyach hagol. I see it the same way as the nefesh itself sees it. The same way as the koyach hamakifim sees it. Automatically. Except there's still a difference. There was never a moment they didn't see it. In Chochmah is a possibility not to see it. It's a distance, it's covered up. Like we said before, in Rotzen there's no possibility. Mokim shel etzoyne shel odom shom hu. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. Phenomenal principle. That the instant that a person wants to be with Hashem, he is. Doesn't have to go anyplace. Chochmah has that phenomenon, that relationship to this. It does not see like in everything in the world. In the Koyach HaGoyim, everything is substantiated by personal experience. Like we said, I touch the table. I know there's a table. I'm experiencing it. My touch, my feel, is kind of the testimony that it exists. No, I'm sorry. This is not your problem, this is everybody's problem.
Okay, but how do you want it? You want to say, how do you want it?
Right.
That's the problem.
You understand? This is the difference. And here we have, Shmuel, you want to have a hot drink or something? What? Hot compress. This is the Chochmah element. On the one hand, it's a koyach. And as we said, but you could see it and not see it. You can close your eyes and not see it. But when you open your eyes, all you do is open your eyes. You don't have to actively look at it, see it. Like in every other koyach. The fact that you don't have to actively look at it means that you see it automatically. Seeing automatically is not a koyach hagol. This is what's called koyach makif. You see, what do we see automatically? Think about it. automatically we can only see that which is an absolute truth. That which is not an absolute truth, we cannot see it automatically. We see it in contrast to something else. Chokhmah has that automatic vision because Chokhmah relates to this absolute truth. That which is really an element of Makif. So Chokhmah in effect sees a Makif because Makif is the real truth. Like we say in sight. Do I have you with me? In sight. What do we see automatically? Automatically we see the all-encompassing reality, not the elements that are in it. The elements that are in it we see by paying attention to them. Automatically we see the reality itself. That's the matter, that's the reality. In order that there be a tree, there has to be space, there has to be an earth, there has to be a sky, there has to be all kinds of different things. Everything that facilitates things to be is part of the matter. And this is what we see in Chokhmah. Ultimately, the most supreme and the highest element, the purest element of reality, of existence. This is what Chokhmah sees in the first instance. When we look up at the sky, and we invariably see various contrasting colors, light clouds, heavy clouds, blue, like a blue sky, a red sky, whatever it is, that comes as a second, on the second level, in the second stage. The first stage is that there is an expanse, unlimited expanse, and that's what we see. Huh?
An unlimited expanse.
Expanse. Expanse. What's expanse? With an A, not with an E. Expanse.
So you're essentially looking at nothing.
You're essentially looking on everything.
But there's nothing.
Nothing specific.
What you're seeing is not something that you could. When you look into space, when you look into the sky, you're seeing something, but there's nothing to identify there.
That's
What you're seeing is how it is that you are.
the fundamental reality that the Rebbe should provide. This is a phenomenal thing. Bichlal, we should understand that the Rebbe should create a world. A world, by definition, is a structure of a limited quality. There's nothing in the world, within the world, that is absolute, that can survive on its own. Everything has to have something else. That's what the world is. And while he created this, so to speak, relative and precarious world, at the same time he gave it a sense of an absolute reality. Within its own content, within its own limits, it's real. The same is true everything in the world, and primarily the human being. Primarily the human being, we say all the time, the human being is also, in a certain sense, a precarious existence. It's temporary here. And during this temporary existence, he has to constantly maintain it. He has to feed his body. And he has to breathe air all the time in order to have life. And he has to have all kinds of different things. while this is true, there's a phenomenal reality, fundamental reality in the person. Which doesn't lend itself to being defined as a precarious existence. The neshama is not a precarious existence. Life itself is not a precarious existence. To the extent that we all realize, observing a living human being, we realize that the life element in this human being is eternal. Even though while he is alive, he still has to maintain his health in order to be able to do things. But the life element is eternal. Chokhmah is able to relate to that eternal quality, eternal element. By being able to relate to that eternal quality, element, on a chokhmah level, on observation level, that is what enables that this eternal quality of the nefesh should be able to produce and imbue itself in individual koiches, in temporary koiches, in temporary actions, in walking, in talking, in doing whatever things, doing temporary actions. This is why Chokhmah is called a mitzvah. It takes the makif and looks at it from a pnimi perspective. How does it do it? Because of its bittul. It's gracious. Therefore, it relates from a functional level to the absolute truth itself. Normally, a functional level can relate only to the functional aspect. Chokhmah, from a functional perspective, can relate to the truth itself. So, who is with me? Akiva?
I'm certainly sitting at the table.
What did you say?
I say I'm certainly sitting at the table.
Okay, so now let's look inside.
Can I ask a question before you go on?
Yeah.
In the statement, not sure I remember exactly, that either Chokhmah can only relate to the absolute, or only Chokhmah can relate to an absolute.
Only Chokhmah can relate to the absolute.
So is it true then that Chokhmah is always relating to the absolute?
What is the point of your question, Baruch?
I'm trying to understand the concept of absolute, which is
we spoke many times, I explained, there is the phenomenon of claustrophobia. And we explained that what is claustrophobia? Closer means that you're locked into a finite area, a closed-in area. And by looking at the area in which you're closed in, you don't see the big reality. Normally, a person who does not have a claustrophobia syndrome, call it whatever it is, he sees right through the wall. The wall doesn't constitute the end of his observation. He knows that beyond the wall there is the rest of the world. The principle of claustrophobia is that when he claustrophobic, he loses connection to the outside, and then it becomes very, very, very uncomfortable. He can't survive like this. This thing that becomes very uncomfortable is true about everyone, whether he has gotophobia or doesn't have phobia. The difference is that everyone normally who doesn't have that weakness, he doesn't get close to it by a wall. He sees right through the wall. And this is Chachma.
He doesn't relate to the Makis.
1 second, let me explain to you. This is Chachma. Chachma is the source of life for our functioning koiches. Chachma brings the big reality into our functioning koiches. When we are closer than if we have this phobia, it means that we get disconnected to the Chachma. Disconnected to the Chachma, we cannot survive. I even remember many years ago. It makes a difference when it happened, but it happened to me very many years ago. Like in the early years when the Besmedrash and the Besmedrash downstairs was a third of what it is today. And any one of you was privy to that state. So there was a group then from Etzisol. You know, visiting groups from different countries was not as common it is today at all. It was a big affair. It was a group from Etzisol, and amongst them was a writer, a newspaper journalist. He was totally unaccustomed to this mob, surrounded by a mob of people. So he was sitting over there by a fabric. It was extremely tight, extremely overbearing. Not only overbearing a lot of people, but everybody was pushing. And he screamed out, "Let me get out! Let me get out!" You know, he was almost fainting. There is no way that a human being can live without that chokmah. This is why we're always pointing out that a human being, bichlal, if he is locked into a prison, the prison can be a mile long. He is suffering enormously, very profoundly. Why? Because a human being must be able to relate to the entire reality, to infinity. And then everything that he touches is real because it's part of that infinity.
I don't get the story about the writer.
Don't get what?
I don't get the story about the writer. How was he from? He lost chokmah?
He was surrounded by people, and he was cloistered in with this mob of people, and he couldn't orient himself. Couldn't find himself. How?
Beyond the mob of people.
What? He could see the mob beyond the mob of people. Right. He could not see that he is still connected to the big world. So that he is right there, surrounded by mob of people. He couldn't relate to it.
I don't want to get off on the wrong part here, but is the Chokhmah relating to the Oris HaAtzmi?
Okay, now let's continue inside. Okay, so HaChokhmah Koyach HaChochma. Shehu Reishis HaKoyches HaGluyim, which is the very beginning of the Koyches HaGluyim, and we explained the significance of it being Reishis HaKoyches HaGluyim. Now there is no other Koyach HaGolui that triggers it, that asks, please find out what this is about. There is none. Harei hi keli. Therefore, the Chochmah as a Reishis is a keli. A keli means what? A receptacle. A receptacle means that it has a limited capacity. There's a presence. Chochmah is a presence. Just as the eye sees, from one perspective, from one angle only. The eye sees the whole panorama, but it's not the whole panorama. It sees what it sees. Through a little peephole. And what's behind him he doesn't see. And yet, but he sees it because it's real. There's a reality element. And the reason it's a reality element is because it's spacious. Because it sees without a trigger, without effort. So he recognizes it as a truth. And this is the Chochmah. Hayi Keli. Therefore, Chochmah is a Keli legilui ha'oires ha'atzmin shebenefesh. For the gilui, for the revealing of the koiches atzmim in the nefesh. We'll have to discuss to some degree the principle of koiches atzmim. Oires or atzmin shebenefesh, right? Atzmin are not koiches. Atzmin is oires. Oires or atzmin shebenefesh. What is oires atzmihim? So we discussed many times, especially recently, but oires atzmim versus koiches makifim. Atzmi.
You said oires atzmim versus koiches makifim?
Right.
You said what?
I just repeated my words.
Which is, what is this?
Oires atzmi versus koiches makifim. Atzmi is what we call the reality itself. Atzmi is everything and everywhere. We have a very good mashal, if we understand the mashal, a very good mashal for the concept of Atzmi. And bringing out this principle of Atzmi, that it is everywhere and everything. And that is, if you have a home, and we say all the time that in your home, you occupy every last corner of your home. Not because you're occupying it, because you go there and you use it. What of you occupies that home? Your essence, your etzem. And to bring this point home, we give the following scenario. You have a home. Then you decide to expand the home. You expand the home. You take one wall down, off, extend the ceiling, extend the floor, and build the wall 10 feet out. Now your home is 50% larger than it was. Do you then need to expand yourself to go on now and occupy the extra 10 feet? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Why would you think that you would?
Because now you're occupying a bigger home. You don't have a problem because you can stretch this out and you're there automatically. These are an expansion to the owner of the home as a result of the fact that now he spreads in a bigger home. So this is a ridiculous question. No such thing, of course not. He is automatically in every crack, in every corner of his home, for wherever the home is.
I'm not trying to lead us off at all, but since we're contrasting Atzmin with Makifim, why is it that we can't say that this ability of ownership and this ability for my ownership to spread out without an active acquisition, why can't we say that that's also an Inyan of Makif? As we said before, Makif is not an Inyan of acquisition, it's not a process, it doesn't need to be initiated, so that seems like what we're talking about here. The house is made bigger, I don't need a process, I don't need an acquisition. It's not a Makif Inyan, my ownership spreads.
Because Makif carries another implication with it. Makif means it's surrounded, it encompasses. Makif means it encompasses the ability to put another table, put another chair, put another bookcase. But that's not what a home is. Does not have a functional definition. Makif provides for for function. Etzem does not provide for function.
Makif provides for the opinion, but the Etzem is not.
Etzem does not relate to it at all. Chochmah, I'm sorry?
When these Oris Atzmim come into the Keli, they become Kolkas Makifim?
Yes.
To the
What?
Keli.
Keli the Oris Atzmim. Megillah the Oris Atzmim. They are Keli not to the Oris Atzmim, to the Gilui Oris Atzmim. Gilui Oris Atzmim is Makif.
It's via Makif.
Huh?
It's via Makif.
It is Gilui Oris Atzmim is Makif. Oris Atzmim there's no Gilui.
Oris Atzmim, no give.
There's no Gilui Oris Atzmim, no such thing. That's what I said. Is there an expansion taking place when you build a house out?
There's no way to show the ownership except for to a functional, I can do in this house whatever I want. I can put the table where I want, I can move the bookshelf, but in terms of the ownership itself, there's no way to represent that.
That's instantaneous. There's no way to represent it at all. There's no need to represent it.
Didn't you say the other day that the Oris Atzmim are Oris Atzmim is a way of the Etzem to allow itself to be seen, to be grasped, to be perceived. Didn't you say that?
Well, not to be perceived. That's how the Etzem is present. It's perceived through Oris Makif. Its present is through Oiras Atzmi.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I missed that.
Oiras Atzmi give a presence to the Yetzer. It represents the presence of the Yetzer. The Chitzonis of Oiras Atzmi is Oiras Makif,
As opposed to Makifa,
as opposed to Makif.
which don't have anything to do with the essence at all.
What?
I thought you were distinguishing between the Oiras Atzmi and the Makifa.
Right.
So what is the difference there? Oiras Atzmi give a presence to the essence,
They give a presence to the Etzem itself.
right? Whereas Makifa, what do they do?
Makifim provide a functional element.
Uh-huh.
What happens when you have a home?
More with a presence.
What happens when you have a home? Oh, now I can spread out. And put all my things down, put my shoes down, nobody's going to touch it. Remember that one?
Yeah, that's a good one. So where is the line in the home muscle between the Etzem and the Oiras Atzmi? We see both of those in the home muscle?
Yeah, but maybe sometime. Right now we're trying to identify Oiras Makifim, how Chochmah can receive the Oiras Makifim. So let's not go there. So he said like this: Chochmah is a keli legilui ha'oires ha'atzmim shebenefesh. And then he explains, which means that those koiches that are bechina, an aspect of makifim shebenefesh. Here we have, it's a little late, but I'll try to fit in a little bit of an explanation of this. Maybe we'll finish it tomorrow. Koiches are bechinas makifim shebenefesh. Means essentially the following. There is, like we're talking about, let's say, the home. The home has an element, let's say, that actually represents the essential, the etzem of the human being. Because the Gemara says, Odom Shin Beis Ein Yodom. I mean, this represents Mama's the etzem. But then, the home has an expanse. And it has several rooms, and it provides for all kinds of different functions, furnishings and all that. Those provisions are actually chitzonius, but those provisions are direct emanations from the etzem of the person. In order for a person to live the etzem as a human being should live, he has to have a chair, a table, a bed. He has to have these things. Not that he has to, because otherwise he is not a human being. He can be a human being without that. He's not a human being if he has no home. But if he doesn't have a bed, so he's uncomfortable. But the bed, that he should express his human quality, that he should actually live the poyamama, so to speak, on a daily basis, in a human manner. He has to have, this is how he would do it. So the Oiras Atzmim, they provide for Oiras Makifim. For Makifim means the primary reality of what a human being is. The principle that we speak about all the time, that we all perceive what is a human being. What is a human being? What is the contrast between a human being and an animal? what's so special about the human being? We all perceive it. The minute we ask the question, yes, this is you. Where is that information coming from? That information comes from the nefesh, through the oineg into the chokhmah. And it is in chokhmah, when we're responding because we have the sense it in our chokhmah. So chokhmah has that ability to see to the essence of the person. What is a human being? Chokhmah does not see the real essence, it only senses it. But nevertheless it senses it, a message from the essential element, from the human being. And then as a result of that, from Chokhmah come all the cultures. From recognizing what a human being is, comes the ruling, the understanding that the human being has to eat from a plate and sitting on the table and with a spoon instead of licking his food up from the floor. It all goes together. It's all the derivative of that. But the beginning is the Chokhmah. Chokhmah translates the nefesh to the practical level. And with this, we will conclude tonight's show. Okay, have a good evening.
The Shabbos Fabringen is sponsored by Shlomo Katz from Muncie and by Yitzchak Schultz in honor of his daughter's birthday, Aleph Menachem Av, Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av.